Hola amigos, ¿cómo están? Queremos darle un fuerte aplauso por haber llegado hasta este momento, este lugar. Sabemos que están ahí reunidos en grupo o quizás conectados desde tu casa a través de la internet, pero qué bueno que haya llegado hasta este momento.
Ya estamos entrando en la tercera temporada de grupos pequeños de Navegando a la Discapacidad. ¿Cómo pasa el tiempo, no? Pero aquí estamos disfrutando de conocimiento y de relaciones.
Y en esta tercera temporada vamos a atravesar unos temas, los cuales son viviendo en verdad y gracia. Sabemos que Dios tiene preparado algo especial para este tiempo. Si ya Dios ha hecho una maravilla, ha obrado un cambio en tu vida en estas temporadas pasadas, prepárate para lo que se viene.
Sí, porque creemos que la verdad nos hace libre y creo que muchas mentiras que nos hemos creído van a ser reveladas de una forma diferente. Así que prepárese, tenga mucha expectativa en su corazón de lo que viene para ustedes.
Disfruten ese tiempo juntos y que Dios los bendiga.
All right, guys, welcome back. We've talked about self-judgment, we've talked about isolation, and we've talked about over-identification. Now we're going to go to the opposite of that. We're going to the positive parts, the positive domains of self-compassion. These are the ones that they're action. We have to take action in order to be able to practice self-compassion. And the first one we want to start on is mindfulness, right? Mindfulness has been shown to be so beneficial, whether it's with depression, relieving some depressive symptoms, anxiety. It's actually even been shown to help with individuals with chronic pain. So mindfulness is actually what we need to be prior to learning how to be kind to ourselves and learning common humanity, right? So mindfulness is our ability to be aware of the present without judgment, right? It allows us to have openness. It allows us to be curious. When we're mindful of our thoughts and our feelings and aware of them, they don't overwhelm us. They don't take over. We're just aware of them. We don't become our thoughts. We don't become our feelings. That's what mindfulness is. And learning the practice of mindfulness is very beneficial, very beneficial. It is not the same as meditation, although meditation can be part of mindfulness. It is not just meditation. It is, and I'll talk about that a little bit later after Brad speaks just a little bit. But we're going to practice this. We're going to practice a mindfulness exercise that is pretty fast, and it's just something you can do when you're just overwhelmed with any thoughts or any feelings, right? So the first thing that I want you to do, we're going to bring awareness to the soles of our feet. So what I want you to do is I want you all to close your eyes. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to plant your feet on the ground. If you're sitting, whatever you're doing, if you're sitting down on the ground and you can't plant your feet, then stand up. Sometimes this is easier if we stand up. So just plant your feet and feel all the weight go down to your feet. I want you to focus only on the soles of your feet, nothing else. Focus on the energy on the soles of your feet. I want you to take breath in, slow breath in, and slow breath out. As you release everything down to the soles of your feet. I want you to visualize roots. Roots are what creates a tree, that creates the stronghold for a tree, right? Without roots, a tree just falls. So I want you to visualize the soles of your feet as they're on the ground and the roots. The roots are strong. Our roots are rooted in God's love. I want you to focus only on your feet as I walk you through this scripture, right? I'm going to walk you through Ephesians 3, 17 through 18, all right? Then Christ will make his home in your heart as you trust him. Can you feel that? Focus on your feet, right? Your roots will grow down into God's love and keep you strong. And may you have the power to understand, as all God's people should, how wide, how long, how high, and how deep his love is. I want you just to sit there a minute. Think about that as you focus only on the soles of your feet. Focus on his love and the roots of his love, right? You can open your eyes. So I hope that is just a really short mindfulness practice, mindfulness exercise. I hope you were able to disconnect from any thoughts or any feelings that you had. Because what mindfulness does, it doesn't, we don't avoid the thoughts and feelings, right? We're aware that they're there, they just don't take us over, right? That's what mindfulness practice is. It helps us to disconnect from those thoughts and those feelings that we might be ruminating over. You were able to, I hope, if this worked for you, you were able to disconnect and just focus on the soles of your feet and feel God's love. And that's what mindfulness practice is.
So I love what Karen said about being aware of our thoughts and feelings without being overwhelmed by them. And the reason I think that's so important is because our thoughts and feelings are telling us that something important's going on here. I mean, we don't have feelings for no reason, but then to be able to accept them without being overwhelmed is such a big part of what we're trying to do here. We're not in denial about our struggles. Our struggles are real, but neither do we want to be identified by our struggles. Because the one that we know, Jesus Christ, is bigger than our struggles. Scripture is full of examples of that. I really believe this is made easier, this being present, being able to just sit with our thoughts and feelings is made easier when we're in that settled stage that we talked about in a previous series where yes, sometimes we struggle, and yes, sometimes we don't understand, and we're looking for information, but we're okay. We're okay with who we are as caregivers. We're okay with who our kids are and their disabilities. We just accept the situation. We don't have to like it all the time. We don't always love it. Sometimes we flat out hate it, but we're okay. And so we can be with it. Being in this space, whether it's mindful or settled, and I really think they work together, it allows us to have a healthy approach to life. We talked about that not being over-identified in a previous session. And this allows us to do that, to just stay balanced. And to see ourselves not only as caregiver, but also as a mom or a dad to other children, as a spouse, as a worker, as a friend. And when we see ourselves in all of those roles, it gives us an energy and a balance to life that really helps us stay on the journey. We're not naive to the fact that Haley does and did get more turns, more attention than Justin did as they were growing up. But it's important that everyone knows that they get a turn. When we're mindful, we're more likely to be able to determine the best course of action. And the reason for that is quite simple. We get out of the fight or flight or threat mode that we talked about in previous sessions, and we can stay in that challenge position that allows us to think, to consider possibilities, and to live right where we are. In the medical world, we have seen the movement over previous generations from a patient-centered care model where we only paid attention to the patient and we did whatever was best for them in that moment without really any concern for what was good for other kids in the family, mom, dad, and we really just focused on the patient. We've moved from that, thankfully, because it's a more healthy model, to a more family-centered care model where we consider the family as a whole and the health of the family as a whole while focusing specific treatments for the child. Well, I want us to see that movement in our families as well, that yes, we have this attention paid to Haley in our case, but we want to pay attention to the whole family, because when the whole family is healthy, then Haley stands a much better chance. Mindfulness allows us to stay mentally flexible. It gives us a better chance at that challenge response. It also allows us to focus on the present moment. I hope you remember the stress mantra that we worked on in a previous series, where the reason I love that mantra is because it really focuses on you. It takes your gifts that God gave you to manage life. It allows you to remember the experiences of your past that God has led you through. And then it points you to the present moment, right? The present moment. This is the only moment that we have any control over. And so being mindful allows us to stay there and then just make a decision for this moment that is the best we can do with what we have control over. When we're able to do that, then we bring a completely non-judgmental attitude toward the experience. And that frees us to just do what we think is best. Using these things, we believe, really deactivates that threat response. So it slows down our heart rate. It slows down our breathing, much like the exercise that Karen walked you through. And that allows us to just think more clearly. And it opens our minds to more possibilities. What I see far too often is families, parents, adults trying to use avoidance as a strategy for managing stress or hard situations, avoiding pain. And the truth is it just doesn't work. And I can see it or hear it when I'm with people and they say really regularly things like, I just don't want to think about it. Or maybe it'll just pass, or maybe I just won't have to deal with it. Well, the truth is, with our kids and our families, we're going to have to deal with it. And trying to push it off or using avoidance as a strategy for dealing with it leaves us unprepared then later when we actually have no choice but to make a decision or make a choice. And so I want us to see this as just accepting the experience as reality. It just is. When we just see it as that, we avoid the frustration and the stress of saying things. Why do these things always happen to me? Do you hear the victim in that, right? Or why do I have to do this? God, why are you punishing me? Do we hear the self-pity in that? Instead, I would rather us focus on the idea that God has given us, He promises us that He has given us everything we need to do whatever He has put in front of us. The reality is it's going to happen whether we acknowledge it or not. Trying to wish it away doesn't make it go away. It just makes it worse. And here's why it makes it worse. The dread and the worry of it just steals our energy and resilience so that when we finally do have to deal with it, we don't have the energy that we could have had if we had just walked into it. I love the Matthew 6 teaching, don't worry, don't worry. Can any of you, and then he goes on to say, can any of you by worrying add even a single hour to your life? And as I was reading that, I just thought that not only will we not add a single hour by worrying, the challenge that is in front of us is still there. So let's just trust that God will give us what we need and mindfully walk in to the challenge that He's put in front of us.
Practicing mindfulness is actually it's not even just good for us. It actually is really good for our kids, especially our ones with special needs. There are a lot of different ways to be mindful. You can be mindful in washing dishes. There's another practice that teaches us to be mindful of our five senses. We sit and we observe 5 things that we see. We observe 4 things that we hear or feel, and 3 things that we might feel, and 2 things that we might smell, and 1 thing we might taste. Once again, that disconnects you from those thoughts and feelings. Doesn't help us to avoid them, right? But it helps us to just re-engage of where we need to be. It helps stops our rumination. It's, even something as simple as coloring. And I think even Brad, I think you do some, like bouncing a ball back and forth with some of our kids who have, who have some sensory issues. The bouncing of that continuous bouncing of the ball, right? Back and forth, that rhythm is called mindfulness practice. It's helpful for our kids. So it's so beneficial in learning how to mindfulness. As Brad said, this helps us to avoid habits that we have that are destructive, that can harm us, harm others, harm our relationships. Mindfulness allows us to be able to learn how to observe our thoughts and our feelings and emotions without actually reacting to them. The best way to describe mindfulness, I'm going to describe how mindfulness works. So this is another visualization. It's not a mindfulness exercise, although it could. All right. So we're talking about the awareness of thoughts and feelings. And let's visualize this. So awareness is the sky. You've got a clear blue sky, and the sky is our awareness, right? And there is space in the sky for everything. It can hold as many clouds as possible, right? So our thoughts and our feelings will drift through the sky in the clouds. So think of that. You've got thoughts of, I've got to hurry and get to my child, or hurry and pick up my child from school, or I've got dishes to do, or even thoughts of, man, I was a bad parent this morning. Man, I made a mistake. These are thoughts that are just continuously in our head. Think of those as clouds, right? Feelings of anger, disappointment, feelings of guilt, feelings of shame, right? Those are clouds in the sky, right? But think about that. The sky is undisturbed. Those are just clouds, right? Those clouds do not disturb the sky. The sky stays the same. Your awareness stays the same, right? So too, worries and sorrows and even any emotion, any thoughts, right? They drift through our awareness. Think about that as our mind. They drift through our awareness, right? But our awareness is not defined by that which drifts through it, right? So visualize that. Visualize your mind as the sky. And if you have a new thought that's obsessive, you have a new feeling that's is overwhelming you, think of that as a cloud. and think of it just floating by, because we should not become that feeling, because it's just a cloud. And clouds float and they disappear. All right? So I encourage you, and along with our discussion questions, I have a huge list of how to practice mindfulness. Like I said, it can be very simple. Everyone is different. Everyone practices mindfulness different. Some people, it's just music. Some people, it is meditation. Some people, it is doing the dishes. We're all different. What one works for one of us is not going to work for the other. But I strongly encourage you to start practicing mindfulness, because mindfulness is what's going to allow us to start being more kind to ourselves, and it's going to allow us to see the humanity in our suffering and pull us out of isolation. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.